Hi, this is Matthew Morden, and I'm here to show you how to solder a kinked wire. So a lot of times when you're doing stuff, especially with earbuds, you'll have it where the wire will just be kinked a bit, and what happens is the copper strands inside of there, they'll be split. So you'll end up getting a partial or a completely broken connection. So this will result in a staticky noise or no noise at all. And if you've got a power supply, you might get less power than you really need to, and you'll end up having an under voltage or an uneven power supply. And that'll mean that some things might actually be overloaded because there's not enough to balance it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to fix that. So what I did here is I've got just a 15-watt power supply for micro USB stuff. This was for a project, but it didn't actually end up working out because I bought a European plugs here. So since it's useless to me, I decided I would use it for this stuff. So it's a basic power supply. So you've got your positive here, which is red. You can see the red a little bit right here, and then you've got your negative, which is the black here. Now everything you're going to do, red is always positive and black is always negative. So the goal of a good solder connection is to make it so that it's strong structurally and electronically. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to take the copper strands. I don't know if you can see it here. I'm going to just try to twist them up a little bit, just like you're tying your shoes almost. The first step of that. So I'm just going to twist it a few times. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, just strong enough so that you know that all the copper strands are touching. So this is called a strand style for copper connection. If you're going to use it doesn't matter if your copper strands touch because all the power is going to the same spot. If you were doing something that had multiple solid strands, which is just one big one, and they were completely separately insulated, yeah, it would matter. They're insulated for a reason. So what I'm doing here is I just tied up the black, which is the negative, and I'm going to tie up the red, which is the positive. So if you're new to this, it might actually be a better idea for you to tie only one of them together at a time, and then move the oops, fell apart there. Yeah, so it'd be better for you to only tie one at a time, and then solder that, and then move on to the next one, because it's going to be a bit tricky if you can't keep it steady. So these are both connected decently well. I'm going to push that in there so it doesn't cause a false connection. Short circuit there. Okay, so that's there. So I'm going to spread this out a bit and just get this arranged well. Okay, that's pretty good. So I'm going to take my solder here. I'm going to tie it around my middle finger on my left hand, or you would do this or you would switch hands if you were left-handed. So I'm going to take this, and you have to go to your very tip of your soldering iron. You got to make sure that's nice and hot, and you want to just put a little bit on there, and then you want to take some steel wool or some other sort of metal string like this. You want to just push it in there, just get it around there. And then you notice that the tip of that is nicely coated there. So that helps your heat distribution to go a lot better. If you don't do this, it's going to be a lot harder to solder stuff because it'll grip to your soldering iron. It'll hard to distribute it. So it also stops your oxidation of your iron, which leads to better duration of how long it lasts. So I'm going to take it and before I do this, I'm going to make sure that it's all perfectly connected the way I want it to, because we don't want any bad connections. And so I'm just going to put a little bit there, right at the top of that, and that'll let gravity take it down a bit. And you'll notice, so solder is attracted to heat. So actually you want to have it down here. I made a small mistake there. You want to keep it down here, and then actually touch the solder to the stuff that you're heating up, and that way it'll actually coat it along there. So that's pretty good right there. So I'm gonna let that be for just like 2 seconds because this stuff cools pretty fast. I'd say that's pretty good. That's not coming apart. So that being done, we're now going to flip this over a little bit. It's cooled enough. There we go. And now I'm going to do the same process right here. Oop. It's being a little bit stubborn right now. Alright, so it's heating up the copper right now. It's the positive area, so it's, there we go. See? That's all putting out good. And that's not the prettiest solder, but it's a decent enough job. There, so you'll notice the copper bridge, or the solder bridge right there. That'll do. So I'm gonna put the iron away. You wanna keep it far away from whatever you're working on. Take the soldering iron off, and I'll clean that afterwards. I'll show you how to clean that afterwards, So this is cooled off enough now. So I'm gonna take a little bit of electrical tape. Just bite it off. I'm going to take this, slip it in between, because we don't want these mixing up. Because if we do, then you're just going to have your positive power supply and your negative power supply just going right there, and none of the power, the circuit's just going to end right here. None of the power is actually going to go to your load, which is, I don't know, your earbuds, your whatever you got here. So I'm just going to do this, and what you'd really want to use is something called heat shrink, not a heat sink, heat shrink. So what heat shrink is something where, well, you'd slip it on. It's a tube, so you'd slip it on to one end, and when you slip it onto one end, it'll make it so you do the solder process, and then once you're done soldering, you pull it over the area you've soldered. Then you use some sort of heat source, and it'll shrink on it, and it'll be like a new layer of insulation. So right here, this is obviously not the prettiest one, but that'll do for that. And just get another piece off. Well, that'll actually do. I'll just wrap this around right here. Wrap that around there. Just try to squish it in a little bit, so that way you hopefully can tell that there are no exposed wirings, because you don't want that to happen. Because then if somebody just walks up to it, they might accidentally touch both of the leads, and you'll have the direct load going to them. Okay, so that's not bad right there. So yep. So now you've got a new wire casing. Both of the wires are insulated in there, and they're both soldered. So that's how you solder a wire. So now you want to clean your tin, or clean your iron, and this is kind of like tinning, which is what I showed you earlier. But you want to take your steel wool, or whatever you're going to use, squeeze it, and just try to gently scrape a little bit off there. You want to use this while it's still hot, because if it's not hot and the solder's not protecting it, you're going to end up scraping it, and that'll ruin the electrical connection. So you notice I left a little bit on there, not all of it off. That's actually better than it was earlier. So now that you leave that on there, it'll stop it from oxidizing. And that's actually it. So thank you for watching, and I'll see all of your guys' stuff. That's it.